Welcome to This Explainer. Okay, so today we're diving straight into one of the most profound, frankly, mind-bending paradoxes in ancient texts. We're talking about the complex intersection of worldly success, spiritual reward, and a super famous case of ancient deception. It's a story you probably think you know inside and out. A father, two sons, and a stolen blessing. But the classical commentaries reveal this entirely hidden layer of spiritual economics operating just beneath the surface. It completely changes how we understand hardship. So let's look at how a seemingly unfair situation was actually a brilliantly calculated spiritual master plan. Right off the bat, we're hit with this glaring, super uncomfortable puzzle. Think about it. If Yaakov was a truly righteous figure, a man of total truth and spiritual integrity, why on earth would he need to resort to cunning and trickery to secure a blessing from his own father, Yitzhak? Why couldn't it just be given straightforwardly? Honestly, it feels totally out of character for a spiritual giant to put on a disguise and deceive a blind man. Why wouldn't divine orchestration just arrange for Yitzhak to bless him openly? This tension absolutely demands an explanation, and the answer forces us to completely rethink how spiritual rewards actually work. Right when this dilemma seems completely unsolvable, the ancient sages drop this massive paradigm shift in the Talmud, specifically in Tractate Kedushin 39b. The text states incredibly clearly, the reward for performing mitzvahs or good deeds does not take place in this world. Boom. Instantly, this reframes the entire narrative. The ultimate cosmic compensation for a life of righteousness is not wealth or easy blessings in the here and now. It's strictly reserved for the world to come. If a truly righteous person were to experience massive, effortless worldly success, it would actually be a spiritual disaster. It would be like cashing out their eternal reward for temporary physical gains. And this brings us to a brilliant point made by the Zera Shimshon. You see, if Yaakov enjoyed straightforward worldly success, it would literally count as his spiritual paycheck. It would jeopardize his infinite reward in the world to come. Yaakov couldn't just walk through the front door and receive prosperity because he was fundamentally unable to use his own vast merits for worldly reward. He desperately needed a loophole. He needed a mechanism to obtain the physical blessings his father wanted to give him without it counting against his eternal balance. He essentially had to separate the physical blessing from his own spiritual righteousness. Because of this, he was forced to obtain the blessings through deception. Fleeing in agonizing fear of his brother Esau's revenge wasn't a punishment, it was actually the solution. By acquiring the blessing through distress and having to live in constant fear, he was reminded every single day that his worldly success was solely due to the blessing itself and not some earthly reward for his own merit. The hardship basically proved that his spiritual bank account remained totally untouched. The anxiety, the struggle, these were the very things protecting his eternal reward, making sure it stayed fully reserved for the world to come. And this whole necessity of hardship, it's baked right into his identity. The very name Yaakov literally translates to "he will deceive." In the textual tradition, whenever the name Yaakov is used, it specifically connotes a situation of distress, hardship, and exile. It represents his ongoing struggle in the physical world, a world where he has to fight, hide, and endure anxiety just to protect his spiritual assets. The name itself is this constant, glaring reminder of the painful but necessary path he had to walk to secure the blessings without compromising his ultimate reward. We can actually contrast this struggle with his other given name, Yisrael. While Yaakov represents distress and the harsh realities of exile, Yisrael connotes a state of peace, comfort, and being completely free of sin. Yisrael represents the ideal state, that moment of pure connection with the divine, when he's residing safely, totally unbothered by external threats. These two names aren't just cool historical trivia. They are dynamic markers signaling exactly what kind of spiritual and physical reality he, and later his descendants, are experiencing at any given moment. The Zohar explains this duality so beautifully. Just as different divine names reflect different attributes of God, like mercy versus judgment, the Torah deliberately switches between calling our protagonist Yaakov and Yisrael. The text doesn't just randomly pick a name. When he's enduring hardship or stuck in exile or facing distress, the text uses Yaakov. When he's experiencing comfort, elevation, and peace, it uses Yisrael. It's this brilliant, embedded code telling us exactly where he stands in his journey. So what's the ultimate payoff of all this hardship? Well, by intentionally enduring distress, living as Yaakov, and deliberately not cashing in his spiritual merits for worldly pleasure, he basically created a massive intergenerational spiritual bank account. Because his reward wasn't squandered on a comfortable life in the present, every single good deed, every mitzvah, every act of righteousness got banked. He became a spiritual billionaire, and he hoarded these merits not out of greed, but because the whole system required those merits to be preserved for a much, much larger future purpose. The Midrash captures this profound concept perfectly. It states that he amassed a treasure house of mitzvahs and good deeds. He knew full well his true reward was waiting in the afterlife, but he also knew his descendants would eventually face the exact same role. They wouldn't be able to receive worldly benefit as a direct reward for their own good deeds in this world either. So this treasure house wasn't just for his own afterlife, it was strategically amassed to act like a giant cosmic trust fund for all the future generations. Now, here is the incredible loophole in this spiritual economy. While a person cannot be directly rewarded for their own good deeds with worldly pleasure, the texts reveal that a father's banked merits can absolutely serve as a source of worldly benefit for his descendants. That is the absolute genius of Yaakov's struggle. By deferring his own comfort and enduring the anxiety of Esav's wrath, the merits he banked in his treasure house became fully accessible to his children. They could literally draw upon his account to survive and thrive in the physical world. But this brings us to the next massive chapter of the story. If Yaakov banked all these merits for them, and when the Jewish people later descended into Egypt they were innocent of sin, why on earth were they forced to endure the agonizing hardship of slavery, right? If they have this massive trust fund of merits waiting for them, why plunge them into centuries of brutal exile and oppression? On the surface, it seems totally contradictory to the whole idea of inheriting a blessing. The commentaries resolve this by explaining a core rule of the spiritual economy, the prerequisite of suffering. God absolutely desired to bestow Yaakov's massive treasure house upon them, but the transfer wasn't just automatic. Just like their forefather Yaakov had to suffer through deception and fear to receive his blessing without compromising his ultimate reward, the descendants also had to pay a tax of suffering. They had to endure the harshness of Egypt before they could spiritually access those immense inherited blessings. The hardship was literally the key unlocking the vault. Let's step back and look at how this logic just builds perfectly. Step 1. True reward for good deeds is strictly saved for the afterlife. Step 2. Because of this, Yaakov is forced to earn his earthly blessings through hardship and deception, proving the blessing isn't just a payout for his righteousness. Step 3. By doing so, Yaakov banks his own immense spiritual merits in a cosmic treasure house. And finally, Step 4. His descendants can only unlock and enjoy this inherited treasure by enduring their own trials and their own tax of suffering in the Egyptian exile. It all clicks together. Now you might be wondering, practically speaking, Egypt was a place of overwhelming impurity. How could they possibly survive that brutal tax without being entirely assimilated or destroyed? Well, the text reassures us by adding one final piece to the puzzle. It states that Yaakov merited establishing the 12 tribes. The combined spiritual weight of these 12 paths was so profound that the world's very existence relies on their merit. This structural integrity guaranteed that, no matter how deep the exile went, they would ultimately survive, prevail, and walk away with the treasure. As we wrap up this explainer, I really want to leave you with a perspective-shifting thought based on the ancient texts we've just decoded together. We so often view our struggles, our anxieties, and our roadblocks as punishments or failures. But looking at the intentional hardships of Yaakov and his descendants, we have to ask ourselves, could the seemingly unfair hardships we endure actually be the very mechanism preserving our most valuable long-term rewards? Could our present distress be the exact tax required to unlock a treasure house we can't even fully comprehend yet? Something to think about. Thanks for joining me, and keep exploring these incredible concepts.